Well, hi, everybody. It's another Conversations with, and I'm delighted to have my dear friend Bonnie Wallace with me. And Bonnie is busy, 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 busy. And how you been?
Good.
You got your business down in Connecticut,
Yes.
and you sing at the nursing homes,
Yes.
and you got 4 kids,
Yes.
and you got 4 kids and a husband,
Yes.
and soccer and whatever.
Yes.
And you can do it all.
I don't do everything.
No.
I do
a
have
treat.
help here and there.
Well, you've always sung to me, and I have a treat for you.
You do?
I have
Oh, boy.
I brought a guest.
guest?
I brought a very special guest to join me today.
Oh, boy.
And I asked George Burns.
No way.
I asked George if he would kindly come, and if he would kindly come and sing to Bonnie.
This is
So I thought it would be
wonderful.
I thought he would come. So I have invited George Burns to come along, and I thought,
Oh, my God.
and I have to read because I'm old, and when you're old, I can't remember all the words. But this is a great song, okay?
I can't wait.
All right, and this is called "I Wish I Was 18 Again."
So do I.
At a bar down in Charlton, an old man chimed in, and I thought he was out of his head. Just being a young man, I just laughed it off when I heard what that old man had said. He said, "I'll never again turn the young ladies' heads or go running off into the wind. I'm 3/4 home from the start to the end, and I wish I was 18 again. I wish I was 18 again and going where I've never been. But old folks in old oaks, standing tall, just pretend, and I wish I was 18 again. Now time turns the pages. Oh, life goes so fast. The years turn the black hair all gray. I talk to some young folks. Hey, they don't understand the words this old man's got to say. I wish I was 18 again and going where I've never been. But old folks and old oaks, standing tall, just pretend, and I wish I was 18 again. Lord, I wish I was 18 again." So there you have it. That's George Burns. Now, one of the greatest things about George Burns, he always had something to say. And I always have a little line that I end with, and I like to say it now. I want you to enjoy every day like it's your last. Because one of these days, you're going to be right. There you have it. Okay, Howard. That was George Burns.
That was amazing. You really do look like George Burns. Doesn't take a lot.
No,
Just
I-
a pair of glasses and a cigar, and then that's it. You don't even
And I
have
got
to
that craggy
dress
old,
up or
and
anything.
that craggy old voice. What I was going to do today, I was going to put on my tuxedo and wear my tuxedo, and then I would have really blown you away.
I don't think you needed it. I'm going to
No,
be
I don't.
honest.
But anyway,
You pulled it off without.
Well, I've done that. I do a whole thing with him, and in fact, the CD's here. That song, and what I do is, I do. You can see my little thing. I do it so I get to here.
Yeah.
And when I get to there, they bring it up. So when I get down to here, this last chorus,
Yeah.
he and I do a duo.
Ah.
They bring it up under me, and then he and I sing this last one together.
Nice.
You know, and I used to do that.
So I have to ask you though, do you really wish you were 18 again?
Yes.
Do you?
Yeah. No, I don't. And I'll tell you why. I do not want to live in this world. This is not the world. When I was 18, life was so much nicer. We loved each other. We got along together. It was just a different world. We had no drugs. There was no guns. People getting shot. You know, people getting run over. You know, you watch the news, and after the first 3 stories, you're depressed.
That's why I don't watch the news. But I feel like that stuff existed. It just didn't exist in what you were seeing because it wasn't right up in your face.
Well,
Now it's
don't
a little
forget.
bit
Well, the
more-
other thing too.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, the other thing too Bonnie, you have to understand is, and you will, is that we had 3 TV stations.
Right.
Well, we didn't have TV until 1954 in the first place. The first TV station was WBZ Boston. Came on in 1954, and it came on at 6 and went off at 9 at night.
Right. So it wasn't on all
No, it was
day
only
and
3
night
hours.
and 700 million
and then over the next
channels.
4 or 5 years, we got Channel 7, which was WNAC TV. And then we had Channel 5, which was WHDH TV. And it was only 3 channels. And it was, you know, in those days, it was NBC, CBS, and a fledgling network called ABC. But NBC was the big network back then. And so that radio was this, everything was radio back then. And so it was a much different world. I have 3 grandkids. And I really, every once in a while, I will say, wow, you know, wow, what's the world going to be like when they're 25 and 30 years old?
It's very different. Things are shifting.
I have to share this with you. I had a very difficult winter. I was sick a lot of the winter. I have asthma, which, as you age, asthma becomes emphysema. So I have a little touch of emphysema. That's the end of my asthma. My asthma is under great control. And I have to be very careful. And on Thanksgiving, just before Thanksgiving, I got a cold. And if I'm not careful, it ends up in my lungs and it's bronchitis. And so it happened. I ended up with bronchitis. And I was sick, and I got through the holiday. And in January, February, and March, I spent 10 weeks in the hospital. In and out, in and out, in and out. And the good news is, they were all worried about my heart. Well, it's not my heart, it's my lungs. But I got myself all better, or they got me better, sent me home, and I went and did rehab, came home from rehab and ended up with pneumonia, back in again. But I finally got it done. Well, one day, I'm sitting in bed in the hospital. I couldn't get out. They had me putting antibiotics in me, everything. And, I mean, I got to tell you one thing I know now why medical insurance is so expensive. The only test that I didn't get was a pregnancy test. That's the only one I didn't get. And if they had figured out a way to do that, I think I might have got that.
I was going to say, if you were a woman, that'd be the first thing they give you, because no. When I was sick for 2 years with celiac disease. I can't tell you how many times they test me I'm like, I am not pregnant.
Right.
I am sick. I'm sick. I'm not pregnant.
They had me with congenital heart failure. One doctor told me I had already had 3 heart attacks and didn't know it. I said, no, I don't have that. I stood right up to him. He said, how do you know that? I said, because I just was at Mass General at my PCP 2 weeks ago, and if I had congenital heart failure, he'd have told me. So I know I don't have it. And as a matter of fact, I have a very strong heart. But anyway, it was a tough winter. But I'm sitting in bed one day, get back to my story. And I'm sitting in bed, and I started to cry. And I don't usually do this. I only cry when the Red Sox win the pennant. And the Bruins win the Stanley Cup. That's my sports enjoyment. I'm saying, oh. And Dick Vaughn started something he never does. He started his little pity party. And I said out loud, sitting in my bed, I've been on this earth. It hit me like a ton of bricks, really hit me for the first time. I've been on this earth 83 and a half years. I'll be 84 in August. That means, Dickie boy, that you've been on this earth a lot longer than you have time left to be on it. Scared me. And about a minute into it, I started to laugh. And I wiped away the tears, and I'm laughing. And I said this: God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change. Mm-hmm. The courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I started to laugh. And I said, Richard, pay attention. Maturity brings with it a whole new set of challenges. And you have to be ready to accept them. You can't mow the lawn anymore. Get a kid for $20. First of all, you got the money. Secondly, don't worry about it. It'll get done. It's only a lawn. And I know you like to have the best lawn in town, but so what? and there's certain things that I can't do anymore.
So you were mowing the lawn last summer?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Believe me. That was I love to mow the lawn. But there's certain things that I just simply can't do anymore. And I had this great conversation with one of the doctors, and we were chatting, and he says, well, he says, the good news is you've accepted it, and you've recognized it, that as you age, I said, it's maturity. When you mature, there's things that your life is different now. You have to do, and the doctor and I chatted, and he had a great idea, which I've done already. And he said, what I want you to do is when you go home, is write down all the things you do. You've told me the church and the TV shows and the high school, you go to Hall of Fame banquet, you're in the Hall of Fame club, and you do the Board of Assessors, and you're on this, and you do that, and you go here. I want you to list all of those things. And then I want you to look at that list, and I want you to have another piece of paper. And on that second piece of paper, I want you to grade them. What is the one thing, if you could only do one of those things, which one would you do? And that'll be number one. And you write that down. And then you look at the list again, you cross that one off, and you look at the rest of the list and say, okay, if there's only one thing on that list that you could do, which would it be? And you put that as number 2. And then you put number 3. And if you want to continue, you can do 4, 5, 6, 7, that's okay. But at some point, I want you to draw a line. And in that list you've finished, I want you to then pick only the things that only you can do that's on that list. And I want you to put that number 1. So at the end of the day, you're going to have 3 items. The 3 things that only you can do and you love to do. And that's what you do. And that's all you do. And the rest of those things that anybody can do, get somebody to do them.
Your doctor told you this?
He and I worked this out. This was a conversation.
That's a great doctor. Not a lot of doctors are good like that. That's really good advice.
Well, we were just
I feel like anyone at any age should do that.
Well, what happened was, the last day I was at UMass, before I went to rehab, they did a catheterization of my heart, where they put a unit in, and it goes right down through your artery, and, and it's a little camera, and it measures, and they go in your lungs, and then it goes over into your heart, and it goes all through your heart. And and there's 4 cardiologists that take the readings. And it takes about 30 minutes, 35 minutes. And you have to lay there, it's scary, but you can feel this thing going through your body, like a little snake in there.
Right.
But anyway, when they finished, they were all buzzing. So I had to see my cardiologist 3 days later as a follow-up. And he said to me, this is the one we had the conversation with. And he said, first of all, from now on, don't let anybody tell you it's your heart. You got a great heart. He said, in fact, your heart may buy you a year at some point in your life because it's so strong. It'll buy you another year that you might not have otherwise had. But he said, I looked at those numbers, and we anticipated. I mean, you're 83 years old. We anticipated what we thought we were going to look at. You stunned us with your numbers, the measurements. He said, if I didn't know, looking at those numbers, I'd say, that guy's about 55, 60. He says, you're just an amazing man. He said, you're very strong, and he said, so from now on, when they want to tell you it's your heart, tell them, nope, it's my lungs. So anyway, that's when we had the, because I told him that story I just told you.
Yeah.
I cried. And he says, really? And he says, what bothered you? And I told him there's certain things I can't do. We got into that conversation. And it was 2 ways. I mean, I participated and said I gave him some things, but that's what I'm doing.
That's good.
And prioritize those things. And he said, and don't feel bad about the other things.
I feel like everyone should be doing that.
Well,
I was just listening to a podcast, and I can't remember who the other day, but it was very similar advice. What they said to do was to write down a list of all the things you do, and then next to it, write whether it gives you energy or sucks you dry. Whether you feel energized or whether you feel sucked down, like depleted afterwards. And also people who you spend time with. Does being around them lift you up Or do you leave feeling like, meh?
Yeah.
And then you write that down, and then you know, the people and the things that are sucking you dry, you draw that line.
Render them irrelevant.
And I was like, wow, I never thought of it. So now you're the second person who's talking about a similar process.
Well,
so I think it's a sign.
One of the funny things, well, first of all, I have to share with you. At one point, I had 9 doctors. 9. I had 3 respiratory doctors. I had 3 pulmonaries, 2 cardiologists, and my doctor at Mass General, who every morning he would talk to those other 8 that were in UMass. And they had a list of things that was wrong with me, that long. And what I found out is every doctor's got to get there, got to have their say. Now, what these are is their teams. Like the rheumatologist, the respiratory doctor, not the rheumatologist, respiratory doctor, was a professor from UMass Medical, and she had 2 student doctors who were in their residency, and they were on the team, those 3 of them. They were all doctors, but these guys are brand new, and they used to follow her around and meet with her, and the same with the others, except the cardiologist was Dr. Meyer and Dr. O'Connor, who joint practice. And they had me down for pulmonary hypertension because one of my heart, my blood pressure in one of my 4 parts of my heart was a little high, and they were all concerned. Well, Dr. Gorel, who's my guy at Mass General, said, well, I know why. That reason that happened, and they were all panicking. It's just hot, it's just hot, it's just hot. And Dr. Gorel kept telling him, no, it's not. What happens is his lungs are loaded, and he's struggling breathing. So the heart is what sends the blood into your lungs to keep you breathing. So what's going on is because he's struggling breathing, the lungs are saying to the heart, hey, send me some more, help me out here. And the heart's working harder so he can breathe easier. And so therefore, because it's working harder, its temperature went up. And he says, but they didn't see that. Anyway, I go back for my follow-up with Dr. O'Shea, who's a terrific woman. And she's very bright, very young. And she says, well, I'm glad you're back. She says, I have some things to share with you. She said, you know the old saying about too many cooks? I says, yeah. She says, well, I think we had too many doctors. And she said, I have now backed way off pulmonary hypertension. In preparation for your follow-up visit today to my office after you get out of the hospital, I went back even to Mass General and I've been seeing Dr. Gorel for 25, 30 years. She said, I went way back 5, 6, 7 years ago and read all those, every visit you made with him and what he's doing to you and for you. And she said, I'm now ready to withdraw my original hypertension diagnosis and say, if you have it, it's very minor. And so I said, my lungs, and they all, but it was a great experience. And I learned an awful lot. And I learned a lot about myself.
Yeah.
I had a lot of time to review things and look back over things and appreciate what a great life I've had.
Well, it sounds like at 18 you had a really great life. And I have to say, I would not want to go back and be 18 again. No, thank you.
I wouldn't.
No,
not in today.
No, I wouldn't want to go back to my 18-year-old life.
Right.
My life as an 18-year-old was not the same as your life as an 18-year-old.
Oh, I had a great life.
I did not. I was not happy when I was 18. I was very unhappy, and so for me, the idea of having to go back and relive that again is like, no, thank you. I like being
my
the age
point.
I am now.
And it doesn't mean going back and being what you were.
Yeah.
It means going back to be 18 and do things differently.
Right.
Is what it is. But I brought that song because where you sing to people, I thought it'd be a great song.
That would be a
to
good
you
song.
And I brought the DVD so you can hear the music.
Oh, good.
And you can hear George. And you can get it. It's online anyway. But
Yeah, I can probably
and
find it on YouTube.
There's another great one that I want to share. I have a great friend who's in the string band with me. Now we're both basically retired. I'll do a few concerts once in a while, but I don't parade anymore. But at any event, Al and I are both the same age, and he sent me up a video, and it's you can get it on TV. It's there. Just go online and ask for it. And because I was telling him I had a tough winter, and he sent it to me, and it's Toby Keith talking to Clint Eastwood.
Oh.
And Clint Eastwood just turned 88. And Toby Keith says, Clint, you're 88 years old tomorrow. What are you going to do? Well, he says, I'm going to start a new movie Wednesday, and then I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And he says to him, how do you do it? He says, I just don't let the old man in. And Toby Keith wrote a song called Don't Let the Old Man In. And I played the thing, and I had to when you hear it, that's another song you could play for people.
Right.
And the one thing that happened when I went to rehab, I was mobile. If you know me, I got up there and I was not going to be no walker, no cane. I'm all set. So I went down.
You're every nurse's nightmare.
Oh no, they loved me. Oh,
Really? Were they worried that you weren't?
Star.
Were you supposed to have a walker? Or
No,
a cane?
they offered one to me. I said, no, I'm all set. And but anyway, I used to have my little oxygen tank and go with me.
Yeah.
But anyway, we went out for breakfast, and there's 20 people in the wing where I was. They had 2 long tables, and there was 10 women, and then another table for men, and then there was a little single table with 2 seats. Well, I always sat there because the other people came in wheelchairs, and I sat there one morning and I looked around the room, and I saw all these beautiful people, and they all let the old lady in. They were all hunched over in their little chairs, and some of them had to wear a bib, and I felt so bad, and I wanted to get up and say, don't let the old lady in, and I felt so bad. And I was telling one of the nurses, who was my buddy, who I wrote a great recommendation for. She was a young kid. She was, there's good and great. She was just exceptional. But anyway, she and I became good buddies. And I was telling her about don't let the old man in. And she says, she says, I see it so much here. And she says, and it's sad. I mean, there's a sadness that goes to it. And I don't know their problem. I don't know what medical issues, so
Right.
I don't want to get into, but if you get a chance, I mean, any of you folks get the chance, go online and bring up Don't Let the Old Man In.
Oh, okay.
If you want to be inspired, and so that's my new mantra.
That's how I live my life. I hope I get healthier every day.
I
used to have asthma too. I was diagnosed with asthma when I was 5. I used to get bronchitis.
Yeah.
We actually had in school, I believe it was like 1st grade, maybe. I don't remember. It was elementary school.
Yeah.
I was young. We had a club for kids with asthma called Better Breathing Buddies. And we would go and she would teach us how to manage our asthma, this and that. I remember I would have massive asthma attacks where I would wind up in the ER on breathing machines.
Oh, yeah.
And horrible for years. And then when I was in my early 20s and I just got married, I got very sick and couldn't figure out what it was. Doctor after doctor after doctor, progressively sicker and sicker and sicker. And I was just praying, someone, God, help me, what is this? Well, I then was looking for this thing on TV or on the internet. I was looking for a commercial that this little boy that I took care of was in the commercial. I wanted to see the commercial, so I Googled it. Well, up came this thing for autoimmune, and I started reading it, and I was like, oh my gosh, the celiac disease, this is everything I have.
Yeah.
So I stopped eating gluten 17 years ago. And all my symptoms went away from my other health issues. And within 2 years, I no longer have asthma.
Wow, that's great.
For 15 years. And on top of which, I will still occasionally need to use my inhaler, but what
Yeah.
I've found is I've been using eucalyptus oil, pure, not Vicks Vapor Rub,
No,
which
no,
is
no.
like, so just pure eucalyptus oil with coconut oil and rub it. Very beneficial. So really minimal intervention needed. And I used to get every winter, I would get bronchitis
Oh, yeah.
as a kid. I have not had bronchitis in I don't know how long, knock on wood, but
Yeah.
it's been a very long time. So just to say, I think sometimes the medical community can help, and they have wonderful things, and sometimes you kind of have to go rogue.
But you have to understand, but Bonnie, what I found is, and what they did with me, is they found out all the things I didn't have.
Right.
They keep taking things, well, he doesn't have this, so that leads him down that road to what he does have. Dr. Gorel said an interesting thing. Alan teaches at Harvard. He just finished his 7th book. He's a consultant to the Mayo Clinic, testified before. He's my man. And I was telling him about how they overreacted to that level that went up in one of my ventricles, whatever it is. And he laughed, chuckled, not laughed. And he said, Dick, one of the things that I drill into my kids' heads at Harvard Medical is when you get a reading that's an indication, for instance, the reading was an indication that you had congenital heart failure. Because if people who have congenital heart failure have that raise in the numbers, it's supposed to be 6, when it goes to 7 or 7.5, it's congenital heart failure.
Right.
What happened to your heart, that's what it did. So they assumed you had congenital heart failure. Now, had they taken the time, as I teach my kids, to find out why did it go up?
Right.
Never mind it's up. We know that. Here it is. Oh, it's up 7.5. Why did it happen? Had they taken the time to find out why, because your lungs had filled up with liquids, you had a little bit of emphysema, you had a bad cold, your poor lungs were pounding,
Right.
and what happened was your heart was working overtime so you could breathe, and if they had done that, they would have realized, no, he didn't have congenital heart failure. His little heart was working overtime so he could breathe better. Clean him up, get his lungs clean, get him on Lasix, get that fluids out of there, and get him better. And his heart will drop right back down, which of course it did.
Right. I think sometimes though I feel like there is a underestimation of what natural medicine, natural cures, things that have been on our planet since the beginning of our planet, and things that people who have been using the earth for medicine much longer than Western medicine has existed. And I think there's an underestimation of how powerful and effective these modalities are. And I just want to give an illustration because my middle son was a carrier for strep. And my other kids kept getting strep. And I knew it was him. I knew it was him. And on top of them keep getting strep, he also had a bunch of behaviors that I was like, something's not right. It's not right. And I said, it looks like PANDAS. If you don't know what PANDAS is, it stands for Pediatric Autoimmune Neuropsychiatric Disorder Associated with Strep. And what happens is the strep bacteria, which is in all of our bodies, in our blood, supposed to be around, the levels are like 300 for normal. Well, if it goes up above normal, the bacteria can actually affect your brain, and it can create a neurological pattern where you're behaving in a way that's not typical. So, because the brain's inflamed with strep bacteria.
Yeah.
So I have a friend who's a nurse. I said, Stace, what do I do? She said, go to your PD and ask them to run his blood level on his strep. Well, sure enough, his blood level was 1200,
Oh.
almost 300.
Yeah.
Now, medical community has two options for pandas if they recognize it. Some PDs don't
Right.
even believe in it, which, how do you not
Right.
believe in that? But whatever. Option A is 40-day rounds of antibiotics. Do you know what 40-day rounds of antibiotics? It kills your gut bacteria.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
going to make you sicker in the end. You're going
Yeah.
to be susceptible to a
Right.
ton of other illnesses. Number 2 is IVIG, which is basically an injection of antibodies from 100 different people's blood. 100 different people's blood. That's the only two options medical community gives. That's it, right? So I was like desperate. I'm like, I don't want either one of
Right.
these things for my kid. Also, I would prefer that my family doesn't keep getting strep. Also, I would prefer that
Right.
he's healthy. So I went online, looked for alternative treatments. What could I
Yeah.
do? I found this guy who was willing to do a free call with me. He gave me a long list of essential oils, what to use for my son. In my mind, it was $300 of oils. I'm like, you know what? $300 of oils. If it doesn't work, I can still go have IVIG for him. I can still go to the doctor and I can still put him on 40 days of
Right.
antibiotics. That's still available. It's a $300 investment. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
So I buy the essential oils. I'm like, I'm going to give this, several months. So I don't know, 5 months later, go back. His blood levels went down 400. They went from 1200 to 400. No medication. So to me, I think there is a misrepresentation in the media of what natural medicine really can do. Those oils are basically herbs, they're flowers, they're roots of trees that have been on our planet since the planet has existed. And people who are indigenous to this planet have been using them medicinally much longer than Western medicine ever worked. And
Yeah.
those people live, by the way, those shamans that,
Yeah.
they live to be well over 100 and healthy
Yeah.
until the day they die because they know how to use the earth as medicine. And what our culture right now is doing is totally discrediting and shaming this absolute wisdom that comes from our planet, where it can be curing kids and keeping them out of the hospital and
Right.
out of these invasive treatments, because who benefits from oils? The oils company. Now, who benefits from medicine? The pharmaceutical company. They don't want to give that money away.
Well, but but let me share this with you. One of the problems with that is, like everything else, however, and let me put that in there, you've got these cuckoos who come along, fast buck, come up with this elixir that's going to fix the world, and it damages the things you just spoke about. Do you understand what I'm saying? They'll come out with this wonder product that you see it on television. If you watch TV at 3 in the
I don't buy
morning.
anything I see on TV.
Well, I'm just telling you.
I think it's all,
Well,
that's, that's what the drug companies do. They
at
run the
3
advertisements every half an hour.
But at 3 o'clock in the morning, they run these TV shows. It's going to make your love life better. It's going to do all kinds of things. And people buy that stuff. And it's a joke. It's just a waste of money. So what happens is it casts a spell or an aspersion on those things like you talked about, which in fact are good and work. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
Now, for
I
instance-
think it does if
now, for
people
instance,
are unwilling
I
to
take-
do the research
But
themselves.
for instance, I take every day, in addition to my own medicine that's prescribed, and I want to get into prescriptions in a minute, because I just went through, you can't believe it. Anyway, I take zinc, I take magnesium, I take potassium, I take vitamin D, omega, B12, calcium, every day. And they're very, very good. I've taken them for many, many years. And I got off them when I had this operation. The doctor told me, stop everything. You can't have anything in you when I do that operation, because it's a 5.5-hour operation. I'm going to take your artery out of your body and hold it in my hand. I'm going to take a piece out of it and put a new piece in. And I got to keep you alive. So he says, I don't want anything in there that I don't know about. So I stopped all pills, and I just didn't get back on them after I get back out. I just started taking them again. And I think it's one of the reasons I had a tough winter, is I wasn't on a lot of that. because up until then, I've always done very, very well. So I'm back on it, and I just wanted to share that with you. One of the things that I struggle with is there's two things that bother the heck out of me. When you go to the hospital, if you're on medication, they will not allow you to bring your medication in there. They get all new medicine for you. And that's fine, I guess, you know. Then they give it out to you and they dispense it. And it is amazing to me what they charge for the same stuff, you know. I mean, I had a situation where I had a pill. I was at a local hospital, and I had a pill. And they charged me $38. And when I got well, they didn't charge me. My insurance company paid them every day $38 for that pill. Now that's a pill I pay about, I don't know, 20 cents for, whatever it is. And when I asked about $38, they explained to me, well, we had to go to the pharmacy. We had to get it, put it in a little jar, and then somebody had to bring it up to the floor, and then the nurse had to bring it down and give it to you. I said, well, was the pharmacist already there on the payroll? Well, yeah. Was the person who brought it from the pharmacy upstairs already there? Works there? Oh, yeah. Was the nurse was on duty, right? She was going to be there anyway. She walked down to my room and handed it to me. Yeah, but she has to watch you take it to make sure you took it. Well, please tell me where the $38 comes in. Well, 4 different people had to handle that just to get you that pill. Yeah, but you still haven't told me $38, since they're already there, all of them. Well, that's how we afford them. Then the other thing was discharge papers when you're leaving. They charged $120 or $118 for doctor I never met, never even saw him, just saw his name. I didn't even recognize him. He signed my discharge papers, $118. Now, if that doctor signs 20 or 30 discharge papers that day at the hospital at $118 each, do you think they're paying them that kind of money? No, they're not. Okay, so imagine. See, that to me is
It's
ripping.
big business. It's big business.
That's ripping people off. That's
I know, but
gouging
that's what they're doing. I mean, it's big business.
I have a medication. I'll tell you a story. It was for my asthma. I have a medication that I take, and it's albuterol. Now, it's cheap. It's been on the market for years and years and years. All of a sudden, it's now not a generic anymore. It's now patented. So now the charge is way up. So I called up my insurance. I was raising heck. What's this? It's albuterol. Oh, yeah, Mr. Vaughn, but now what the company did was they changed the propellant. And that made it new. And they refiled that patent with the new. That's just called gouging you. And you take a pill.
Rampant.
And I've seen some pills that I take that $400 or $500 for a bottle of them. Now that company makes 1 million of those a day. Okay, a day. And for what they charge you for that medication. And it's sad. And it's sad. And the tragedy is that nobody does anything about it. They all talk about it, our governments, but they don't do anything about it. You know?
They don't do anything about it because they can't.
They can.
Except,
Bonnie, they
there's
can.
so much money in that
Bonnie,
industry, and they're
can.
pulling the strings.
They can, except the fact that the pharmaceutical companies make huge donations to their campaigns.
Exactly.
So
That's what it is.
So they don't want to.
Exactly.
Because they're going to be biting off the nose that feeds them.
Exactly.
So
that's exactly it.
So that's the bind.
They could if
they're on
they
the
wanted.
tape.
That's exactly it.
And you see, one of the problems, I do a show with a fellow named Richard Morco. And Richard and I have a lot of fun with the politics of it. And I've spent a long time in politics, part of my career. I was involved in the Ted Kennedy campaigns and the John Kerry campaigns and Governor Dukakis's campaigns. And so I know the game. And the tragedy is that the government of the United States of America is corrupt. And the government of the Commonwealth is corrupt. And every little town in the Commonwealth has corrupt people who get elected to office, and they are corrupt, and they do things that are wrong. And no matter how hard they talk about ethics, and you have to take this, study this, and do that, But for instance, we have members of the Senate and the House of the United States. After they leave office, they still get paid, and they still get their hospitalization, and they get a huge pension. You know, and it's sad. It's sad, but that's how they voted for themselves, and so it's just a disappointment that this is what goes on, and so who pays for that? We do, the little people, you know, who get paid, who have to take the hit. For instance, we haven't done the automobile insurance laws, haven't been upgraded for years. And today, all the cars now, the front bumpers and rear ends, are all one great big piece of plastic or fiberglass. So if you get a little dent in there, they can't just sand it out like they used to. When they were metal, they could just sand it out, fix it, put in a little lead, clean it up, fix it up, spray it, look like new. You know, $200. Well, today, that whole front piece has to come off. That's $3,000. So you get in a little tiny accident. And I had a situation in myself where I had a little bumper-to-bumper thing. A little scratch, nothing on my car, a little scratch on the other car. And the original thing came back to me, the woman told me it was $646. She got an estimate. Oh, great, get it fixed. My insurance will take care of it. Well, I get a call from the insurance company now. When the bill came in, it was $1,064. Well, what happened to 646? Well, Mr. Bond, we don't, you know. Well, that's what she took. She had an estimate. She said, well, the bill is $1,064. Well, what happened is, the minute it goes over $1,000 in Massachusetts, you now have a surcharge. 6 years. That's wrong. They should have a law that says if the damage is 1,000 to 3,000, it's 1 year. 3,000, because today, when that bill originally was written, back in the 50s, we had big chrome bumpers
Right.
on the car. You see what I'm saying? And so, but they've never upgraded the bill. So you get socked with a surcharge for 6 years for a little tiny ding on somebody's car. You know, and so, and I've talked to the politicians, politics as usual. And they say, yep, you're right, you're right. Well, what are you going to do about it? Well, you know, then you find out that the reason nothing's going to be done about it is because half the members of the Massachusetts House of Representatives are attorneys, and they have an insurance business on the side.
I agree that there's a lot of corruption, and I want to say this about the medical industry because I think that there is popular opinion, which I believe is guided by the media's representation of things, which is that basically the way to get better is at a doctor because the doctors know best.
Yeah.
Right? And the fact of the matter is, what if there was a way when you first got your cold, that cold would go away in 3 days and not turn into your bronchitis, and you would have never wound up in the hospital because after 3 days, cold would be gone. Would you be willing to do it if it didn't involve going to a doctor?
Sure.
Because that's the thing, is that there are other ways to be healthy, that you can nip a cold in the bud in 3 days. I had 2 colds this winter. They were gone in 3 days. When I was a kid, that would have turned to bronchitis.
Oh, yeah,
Could have
yeah.
been turned to hospitalization
Yeah.
because I wasn't aware of
Right.
other ways to get better.
Right.
And I think that your point is exactly correct, that the people in office are getting paid money, and so it just keeps spiraling.
Oh, yeah.
And who runs the ads? Every 5 minutes, you're seeing another advertisement for another
If they
pharmaceutical.
stopped advertising, they could cut the price of the pill in half. Plus
Well,
the
there's
fact they
so
get
many
this cute
ads.
little chickie running through the woods, and then it says, and by the way, if you take this, you could die.
You could die, and that's the side effect of every single medication.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
It's
and
the side
They
effects
read
are
the
worse than the
disclaimer.
actual
Yeah,
symptoms.
the disclaimer at the end.
Yeah, and
Well,
yet
the trouble with most medicines, the good that it does for you, at the same time, it's got a downside.
But that's who's
it can cost
paying
you.
for the programming that
Right.
we're seeing.
Right.
So you know, because you've been in radio,
Right.
that's who's supporting the program.
Oh, I know.
Right? So they're supporting the program, so you can't say anything bad about it.
Yeah, you can. Bonnie, thank you so much. That's another, see, I say it all the time. Don't worry about me. That's another Conversations with. Great, 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 Bonnie, to see you. You're terrific.